So here we're going to make a bespoke jacket, and this client is coming from far, so we really want to minimize the amount of fitting that he's going to be doing. So instead of doing a separate fitting garment and a calico, I'm going straight to the fabric, which of course is increasing my anxiety like to insane levels. So what I've done here is just added ridiculous amounts of seam allowance all over the place, so that if we need to adjust anything, then there's enough space to adjust. Especially this fabric is quite expensive; it's about 1,000 rand a meter. So yeah, like I say, I've just added quite a bit of seam allowance all over the show. And the first thing I'm going to be doing now is, of course, going around and doing the tailor's tags. Now, if I had done a calico fitting first, I would be a little bit more secure and confident about a lot of things in my life. So I wouldn't, for example, here, you see here's where my break line is, and I'm just adding an insane amount there, about 10 centimeters up, which I know is ridiculous. I just can't help it. But with the calico fitting, I would be much more confident about that. I wouldn't have added so much seam allowance. I would just add 1.5 centimeter seam allowance here on the break. And then if we did need to adjust it a centimeter up or down, we would have done that on the shoulder. As it is, the shoulder seam allowance is 3 centimeters, which I know it's ridiculous. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead, do all of this basting. And so I'm basting this, I don't know what you call it, this opening here in the front, basically the break line of the waistcoat. Then I'm going to do tailor's tacks down the center front. Sometimes I won't do this, I'll just do a running stitch. But today I felt like just doing it like this. Then I'll do center front, and then I am going to just do one along the waist, so that I can make sure when we fit, we have a really good balance. And from there, we will continue, and especially what I want to do today is join this to the horsehair. Now, the one thing that is working to our favor today is that this client doesn't want any pockets, which is just fantastic because that's a lot of work out of my life. And also, especially in terms of joining the horsehair, especially in terms of basically everything, it just it's saving me, I don't know, 4 hours in total. Who can know? But anyway, time to baste. Basting time is my favorite time of every day. So there we are, basting done. I've just done this break line here at the neck, center front, and the waist. The dart I'm not going to baste because I feel that is just making more work for myself in the future. And you can do this, of course, with a tracing paper. I'm just using the pin. So just put a pin through exactly the mark I need to mark. And I'm only marking the center line. Center line, I mark where it stops at the front, at the top, and I mark where is this waist point. Now this pattern, I'm actually just curious to see how it turns out because it has the widest point of the dart 2 centimeters above the waist. Interesting, never heard of such a thing before. But let's check it out and see if it is fashion. As I'm sure you know by now, I will just draw the center line of my dart, and then I'll draw one leg only. So this dart is 2 centimeters in total, so of course 1 centimeter each side. Just going to draw that. Join it up there. And I'll just put a little mark to let myself know which is the center line. Okay, so that's that. Now we can, of course, open this up. Here at the bottom, it has a concave shape, or is it convex? I never really know. So my 5 centimeter seam allowance here is not feasible because this has to turn up, and now this is going to be too tight. So I'll kind of decide what I do based on the fitting. Either we can trim that seam allowance right back and put facing there once the dart is done, or what I'm going to do for now for the fitting is just sew the dart up into that point. Maybe like half a centimeter past the hem, and then when it folds back, it will just sort of open up miraculously, exactly as it should do. Okay. So then we've got all of that done. Now, before we carry on, we need to move to the horsehair. And my horsehair, I always just cut kind of willy-nilly, wherever the shape allows me to on the piece of fabric that I have, because I then give it a soak. I've already soaked it just when I buy it. Then I give it another soak just because I'm extra. And so I kind of just use whatever shape is there in the fabric. So now that I've done all of that, I'm going to trim it down. This extraness of mine here is also going to cause me quite a drama. This higher lapel, higher break point, call it the lapel depth, the higher lapel depth. The depth of the clothes is going to cause me quite some drama. But yeah, that's what the job's about. So here I'm just trimming it down to the shape of the fabric itself, knowing that of course I'll trim it further down than that, but for now I just want these two to be equal like that, as equal as possible. So you see, like here it doesn't go all the way, but that's because my seam allowance is insane. So I'm not stressed about that. I'm really stressed about that it will cover as much of the pattern as is needed. And we'll look at this one and see the same kind of story. Just getting this to more or less as best coverage as we can. Because like I say, I'm always just using whatever shape the fabric has based on all the other hundreds of things I've cut out of this fabric. Okay. So in this case, I actually feel it's going to be worth my while to do a tracing paper. For that dart, because then I can do both sides of the horsehair one time. So let me grab that quickly. Right, so I'm going to take this tracing paper and put it like so, with the color side outside, in between these two layers, so that there's a color side touching each side of the horsehair. You can feel where that ends, it's about there. The same story here, I really only need the center and any like changing points, the widest point or the skinniest point or whatever. Otherwise, I just need that center line. Yeah, there we go. Fashion, baby. So there's fronts marked. got everything I need there. And yeah, there we have horsehair marked. So on the horsehair, easy peasy, I will just go, I'm just going to use one of these. I suppose I can use this as well. Okay, back to fashion. So same story as before, I'm just drawing a 1 centimeter dart over here. Except in this case, I'm drawing both sides. Because I'm going to cut this out. Now, if you're doing this on a suit, you need a few more match points. But a waistcoat is much simpler, so I'm really just going to use this corner here as the match. Which maybe it's a little bit of a cowboy method, but I'm a cowboy, so this is how it goes. Okay. So there is, this is for a dart. We've marked all of that out. Here I've got the 2 legs, but usually I just have 1 leg of the dart marked and one side. And I just mark which is the center, just so I don't get confused. And a piece of fabric that's kind of the same length as the dart. Sometimes I'll use the same fabric, just kind of depends what I have. So here we are. I'm going to halve that along my center line. So this is why I just do 1 leg, because if I've got it on the center, then I can just follow 1 leg and I don't have to worry about matching 1 layer to the next. So I'm just gonna maybe do 3. I'm going to take my other fabric at the back and just pin it also in place. I'm going to stitch through all these layers on this leg of the dart. You know I'm a pinner. I love pins, so here they are. Okay. Obviously, I'll do the same on the other side. I'm just going to stitch along here. You can, it kind of depends what I'm feeling that day. You can, some people say you mustn't back tack here. You must just stitch straight off here. I don't know. I back stitch maybe 2 stitches and then come off like that. I don't do a big back stitch here, just a little bit, maybe, yeah, like 2 stitches and then off. What I would do here is first put the square of my pocket, then cut this out so that we join that with the pocket around it. I think I would need to do that. But in this case, there's no pocket, so I'm just cutting out the dart like this. So that's actually done. Stitch the dart over here. So here I've stitched here, and now because of my extra seam allowance here at the bottom, only stitched to 4.5 centimeters from the bottom, and then here 1 or 2 stitches back, and then coming off the edge there. Of course, step 1, make sure the iron is warm. I'm just going to give that a nice flat iron. Then, yeah, it depends. Like at the moment, I'm just going to use this form. I can use the sleeve board. I can use some other form to whatever I want. No one will control me. In the day, I'm just going to split that open. So you see now you've got 2 layers of fabric this side, 2 layers of fabric this side. So it really gives you a nice flat seam on the right side. So it's just a little bit cold still, so I'm just taking it slow. Just ironing that seam open. All the way to the edge. So this part here at the bottom, I don't want to iron too much because this is going to flip up and I don't want to have a random crease there. It's going to flip up like so. And then that will open up to allow this shape that I have there. So that's why I've left it like that. So this portion we're just going to trim down, trim out. So you start with, let's trim that at a bit of an angle like so. And then I'll trim one edge, quarter centimeter from the seam. This portion here at the top, 1.5, 2 centimeters from the tip of your, what is it called, the dart. And then this I'll trim maybe 0.5 centimeter, maybe 3/4 centimeters longer. So now what we're going to do, so see there I've got 2 layers not ending on each other, open like that. Now I'm going to, on this bottom one, see where is, like the, how can I say, the final stitch of the dart, which is here. I'm going to cut diagonally just on this bottom one, up to that final stitch. I'm going to stop about 1 mil before that and just let the fray travel all the way to the end. Then I'm going to flip it up and turn it over, like so. And then I like to just trim the rest of that down as well, like so. So that's the shape I want. Now, if this was a suit jacket, then we would put some of that double-sided fusing over there and just glue this little portion down. Because this is a waistcoat, the dart is coming through the horsehair, so I'm not going to do that for this one. But that's how you would do your seam, and you see on this side, so nice and flat, without having to cut or unravel or any drama like that. So darts are done, and like we were saying, we're leaving that portion open so that this can still have a curve here. And we didn't glue this portion down as we would do for a jacket. So now I'm going to use this corner to match, and I'm matching my front edge. And at the end of the day, this dart, it's never going to be 1,000%, but this should be more or less in line there. So I'm going to pull that little portion through and then squeeze this as close into that seam as is humanly possible. There we go. Look at that. Fashion baby. Obviously the same on the other side. Now because the seam is, has a bit of volume, this is now going to be a little bit excessive there. Don't stress about that. As long as it's not too high or too low, so that the point is now where we want it to be at the point of this dart. And my front is more or less where I want it to be, especially this corner. It's not too high, not too low. And this is also why you cut the horsehair super big. So you see I'm flattening this portion. This portion you can't really see because it's underneath, but there you go. It's lifting up like that. which is what we want. And what I'm going to do is stitch this down. I'm going to use a single. So I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm just going to make sure I catch only the horsehair, which can be a bit challenging, but you can do it. 3 stitches in one place. So this stitching is permanent. And here, you're going to go to this extra fabric of the dart. And now here I can give a little bit of a tug, because at the end of the day, I'm wanting to pull this horsehair right up against that seam. Of course, what's going to happen if we fit and we find we need to adjust that dart, well, I'm going to cry a lot. And then I'll just be undoing all of this. But that shouldn't be the case. Or rather, adjust on the sides. You must always know your first bespoke is not going to be 1000%, because the pattern really has to be developed. If you have the same tailor for a few years and few garments, then you can really get your pattern refined to 1000%. But if you're going to do a one and done, you just have to accept that it's going to be really much better than anything you can buy from the shops. But still, things like this will take another waistcoat to refine. So anyway, I'm just going with the herringbone, and I am just making sure that I don't catch the front of the waistcoat, just the horsehair in this portion of the dart, and then giving it a bit of a tug, so that this, every time it's tugged into the center here. I suppose you could pin that if you wanted to. How is that? No, perfect. So of course, if you had a pocket here, like we were saying, we were first, stuff is so sticky. We would first be preparing the horsehair with that little window for a pocket to come through, and then cutting out this dart. So then what we'd be doing here is just making sure that we knot off above and below the pocket, so that when the pocket gets put through, gets cut there, we don't end up losing all of this hours and hours of work that we've done to join these pieces. It just unravels in a minute. Okay, not going to come all the way down, because I know there's quite a bit of adjustment and stuff like this. That could be done. So I'm just going to stop there. Stop here. And just kind of knot off. So really I should be doing this in gray. So let me go, now that I've finished that extra long piece, and get a section of, and then we'll do it on the other side. So make sure that's all nice and flat. I can then bubble that so that this will come flat, flush into this groove. And I really want this to be straight so I can really lift that up. I actually think pins are going to help me here. Because I noticed with this one they were actually shifting the horsehair was actually shifting a bit more than I like. Okay. There we go. So same story. Not coming all the way at the edge. Shouldn't have my hand underneath there either. But I'm just going to be a rebel. No knots, just 3 times in one spot. And using the herringbone stitch, which is going to, in a way, pull the horsehair in underneath that dart. I can't really keep my hand there, can I? And yeah, that's basically just how it goes. Stitching and stitching. And here we are at the top. So I'm just going to do these last few stitches. Kind of pushing that horsehair as deep into that groove as I can. Getting here to the top. Catching just that last little bit of the dart. Okay. And then I'm just going to herringbone this little extra flap that we've got here. Just stitch that down. Okay, there we are. So there we've attached along the dart the horsehair and the fabric itself. And that is going to be permanent. That's not moving anywhere. So I'm going to give it kind of a tug, top and bottom, just to make sure those layers will move around. I'm going to flatten out the top by bubbling the bottom. And then Here we do need another color because this basting is not permanent. This is just to keep the layers in place. And you can do as many lines as you like. We are going to be going from the right side, flattening that just to straighten that portion out. Okay, so I'm going to do one kind of exactly in line with the dart, maybe with a bit of a curve. Start over here. No knots, just 3 times in one spot. Keeping this nice and straight. Then just coming in a way just in front of that dart. Now, I don't want this to be tight. I just want it to be smooth. Because this roll that the form is giving it is already going to make it tight. Yeah, I'm stopping before that 5 centimeter turn up that we've got, because that I want to trim away at the end of the day anyway, so no point in basting into that. Yeah, a little bit of a tug. So now that portion, just go like so. So now here, again, I don't want to go actually further than the shape that I want eventually. So this one I'm just going to keep a little bit back from this basting line of the top of the opening of the jacket, lapel depth, or lapel line, whatever you want to call it. And then here I'll just be just a smidge in front of the center front. So I'm just constantly moving it around and over the form so that the piece I'm working on is as flat as possible. And again, stopping before the 5 centimeter turn up. I think this one's a little bit low, but that is just how it goes. All right, and again, doing my tugs, making sure it's all nice and flat. Now I want to do this portion, so I want to flatten that out by moving all of that bubble around this side. So I'm going to lift that bubble out the way. This will all become flat. That's too short. I think when I'm working on this side, these are okay. They're just really sticky to the horsehair. It's driving me a little bit crazy. Crazier than I already am. Okay, so again, more or less straight down. then I'll move the form just to keep giving me a relatively flat surface to work on. And just come next to this dart. And stop before 5 centimeter turn up. All right. Again, give it a bit of a tug. So, things have moved around. So this just kind of settles everything back to default position, I suppose you can say. So here, I know my seam allowance is 2 centimeters there, so I want to be inside that. And we're just going to go around. So here on the side seam, depending on the style, sometimes you go, this side seam goes into the back. This one I'm not going to do like that. So I want to make sure that, again, I know my side seam is 2 centimeters, so I want to be inside that. And stop 5 centimeters before the turn up. And okay, so that's basically done. You could leave the rest, but because it's going to be a while before I see this client, it might be a while before I get back to this project. And actually, I do it all the time. I just secure my edges. So first, I'm going to check that this is all fine. I'm going to make sure there's no funny bubbles anywhere by just holding it up like this, running my hands over it like this. So this is the same as with a bespoke jacket. Make sure there's no bubbles anywhere. And then I'll start somewhere wherever I feel like. And I'll just go all the way around and just baste the edges. So that I don't have too many loose ends flapping about. And then also all the strain is not on these knots. They can end up warping the fabric right there. So I'd rather just give them a bit of emotional support by putting this line of stitching line, the edges. And that is basically that. Of course, I'll do the other side exactly the same. Then at this point, I won't trim off this excess here. I'll first give it an iron and let it relax for a day before I do that. Nothing to it, just stitching around. So this stitch that hops over this open vent here, we'll just cut this when we get to it. But for now, it's just, like I say, to make sure these knots don't take all the strain. And then up the front edge. And we are done. Yeah, 7. So we've done all of the basting. You can see all the layers are now stuck together. So now I'm going to iron this to, in a way, felt these two together. So you're here on the dart, I'm not going too far over, and I'll make sure I don't flatten the dart. And then just working on a flat section, so you see I can lift that portion and this will become flat. You can do this over a shape. I like to do 2 sections. So I'll do one on the flat like this from the back, and then one on the flat, on a shape from the back. You'll see what's happening. So you see I'm lifting that portion becomes flat. Just making sure I iron all of that. Then I'll come this side. So this, I'll just iron on the edge of the dart, not flattening it. And I can here see if there's any bubbles that should not be here. So this portion I can do on the egg if I really want. Should really be doing this through a cloth, but I live on the edge. So yeah, that's basically that, just to kind of warm up these fibers and get them all then to settle down together. And once I'm happy with that, and this is a waistcoat, so it's actually quite a simple shape. Happy with that, I'll pin it onto the mannequin. So now I've got that piece ironed. I'm going to, in a way, like stretch it over the mannequin. So this, if you don't have a mannequin, I don't think this is really going to kill anyone. The Germans tell me you can stretch it over just a shape like an egg, which I think is fine. Mannequin really does help. So I'm kind of making sure that the center front is where I want it. And just, I don't want to pull it too much because I don't want to warp it. But just tightening it over this. Honestly, I don't know if this is really going to make such a difference, but I do it because that's just how it goes. And then I'll leave it here overnight. And tomorrow I'll carry on. So you see, I'm just kind of stretching it over this shape of the mannequin, just so that these 2 layers can, in a way, settle down. And I like to do it when it's warm so that it can now settle. And then tomorrow I'll steam it again, iron it again, and then carry on.